All right. So, like we said in the emails, this is just going to be a pretty quick overview of the steps to take to close out your Learning Lab grant. It'll be about 20 to 30 minutes long. And then after that, Nargis will talk a little bit about evaluation. And if you have questions about that or some technical questions, she'll be available to discuss that for a little bit after. And then I think she's going to have basically kind of office hour type of things that you can book if you want to have a one-on-one kind of meeting to talk through some project stuff with her. But yeah, so we'll do this recap. It is, like we said, this is mostly geared towards the fast projects since a good chunk of you guys are closing out soonish. But the basic information is the same for the grand projects as well. So we'll go ahead and jump into this. So, first off, as you're starting to wind down, it's a good idea to check out the Grantee portal again if you haven't taken a look at it recently and poke around at the resources there. Actually, let me pull this up so we can kind of look around. And so, this is what it looks like. Uh, you might want to check out the resources library here, where there's a collection of things that will be relevant to you as you're closing out. There's a specific evaluation resources page, a curated list of tools and information on making educational resources accessible. And we also have an OER resources page. Oh, I also wanted to point out, we just launched this, I think, yesterday, the day before yesterday, like a Q&A chatbot. So if you have questions, you can now use this chatbot. You can also still reach out to us, of course, or look for answers within, the Grantee portal, but we now have a chatbot as well. So again, the OER resources here, we have a little module to walk you through copyright basics and then steps or things to think about as you're thinking about what sort of license to choose for your assets. There's a webinar on OER. We have also this little guidebook on OER. Again, for the accessibility resources, it's just a curated list of other tools and information that we've found that we think are very useful. And then the project evaluation resources, we've done several webinars on evaluation. And then this is a PDF version of the evaluation template, or the final evaluation report template. That like an editable doc version or Word doc version is in your project folders in Google Drive, but this is just a PDF version. There's also a PDF version of the evaluation guide. And yeah, so poke around there. Let me jump back to the slides. As you're winding down, just take a moment to take stock of things. Think about where your project stands at this point in time. Revisit your grant agreement and the deliverables that are listed there. Think about whether or not you've met them, whether or not you'll meet them by your closing date. If you won't meet them, consider thinking about why you haven't or what steps you need to take to meet these deliverables. Think about whether or not you're going to have funds left over. And if you are, kind of take stock of why. And think about your future plans for this project. These are things that will also be asked in the final evaluation report. Are you planning on scaling your work? How does your project plan to sustain the work? Do you have any publications in the pipeline? So on and so forth. Keep in mind that beyond the formal closing date, the FAST projects have a 90-day grace period. It's longer for the grands, it's 6 months. But you have 90 days to complete your deliverables, finalize the expense reporting, complete the final evaluation, all those good things. Within that 90-day or, for the grant's 6-month grace period, you shouldn't really be spending anymore on your grant unless it's something related to winding down. So like if, doing data analysis for the final evaluation report, something like that. But spending on implementation and stuff should be completed at this point. Other exceptions would be like if there are activities that happened earlier in the grant period, but they didn't hit like the accounting books until like now or late, that's fine. We also make exceptions for, if you have cleared with us you plan to attend Inspire, and that's taking place after, the closing date or during the grace period, we'll accept that as well. And then finally, the last thing to think about is whether or not you need an extension. If you do, just reach out to us and we'll walk you through the steps for that. Broadly, we'll basically ask you some really basic questions on the status of the project. We just kind of want to know what's going on and the reason why you need an extension. And then we'll ask you to do a spend down plan in a template that basically looks like the budget modification template. So I will pull these things up real quick for you guys to take a look at. So again, very kind of straightforward questions that we'll ask about what's been done, what hasn't been done, why you need an extension. And then, like I said, this looks almost exactly like the budget modification template, but it basically is going to ask you estimate probably at this point, how much do you have left at by the time your grant is originally slated to close? What you need to spend on, why you need to spend it during a proposed extension period with a proposed spend down date. If you request an extension, reach out to us again. A copy of these things will be added to your project folders, and then again, we'll talk you through this process. Okay. Any questions about that so far? Again, you can also just ask questions at the end, but I'll pause there just for a couple seconds.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
This is Lori from Cal Poly Maritime.
Hi.
And so I just want to make sure I understand the official closing date is supposed to be July 1st. Is that right?
I don't remember off the
Or
top
is
of
it
my
like
head for your project.
or is it just it's different for each project?
It's different for each project, yeah.
Okay. And then the other question I had was, so one of the things that we put in our budget was for an open access publishing fees.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you publish in those, you
Yeah,
have to pay a fee. And
right.
so, hoping to have that done in the next few months, but I didn't know if that would be a part of the grace period or if it's longer than that, or if we would need an extension for that. Because some of it too is like we don't know exactly where we're going to
Yeah.
publish. But I didn't know if, that would,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think if you're not sure, and we can talk more like offline, but if again, if this is a process that might take a few months and you're not totally sure when it's going to happen, it might
Yeah.
be best to ask for an extension, especially since it was already part of your budget that you're going to be publishing as in an open journal. Yeah, and we can talk about, how long you want to extend that for. And typically it also depends on some institutions. Like some institutions like literally need like it's something in paper that says, this is going to stay open in order for you to invoice that, to the grant. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I would assume too, we have travel that is like right at the end of June. And so that would all fit in the 90-day grace period, I'm assuming.
Travel to Inspire, we typically will allow travel to other conferences. It might be a case by case basis, but yeah, if shoot us an email and we can talk about it.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Mhm. Yeah. Any other questions? Alrighty. So moving on. Um, like I kind of pointed to earlier, the grantee portal has this closeout checkout list, and we're just going to basically go through each of these a little bit in depth. So kind of a broad overview is that you're going to complete your deliverables, obviously, um, do the final evaluation report. Like I said, the editable version of that is in everyone's project folders in Google Drive. Make sure your participation data tracker is up to date. Upload your project assets to Carly. This is Learning Labs asset repository for all grantee created assets. Complete your expense report and your final invoice. Complete the grantee closeout survey, and then do your sort of closeout meeting with either me or your faculty consultant or Selena further down the line if you're with a grant project. Okay, so the final evaluation report, again, please use the template that's provided for you. Um, If you have any other data on outcomes that are really interesting, that might not necessarily fit neatly into some of the questions that are asked in the template, we still would love to see them. So feel free to include like a addendum or appendixes with your final evaluation report. Um, I'll pull up the template for the final evaluation report real quick, just sort of walk through it briefly. Um, it's just preamble. One thing to note, though, is that since Learning Lab is a state-funded entity, these reports are technically subject to public records requests. So it's just something to keep in mind. Maybe, I don't know, don't badmouth your dean or so. Not that anybody you would badmouth anybody in your report, but it's just something to keep in mind that technically this could be accessible to the public or to government, other state government entities. Um, Not all of the questions in the final evaluation may be applicable to you. So if it's not applicable, feel free to skip it and put, NA as needed. Also feel free to, if there's a section where the answer is basically the same answer you put further up in another section of the report, you feel free to say see or refer to question whatever, instead of repeating things. So I'm just going to go over this just really quickly. The goal section, for most of you, this is just going to be reiterating what was in your proposal, unless your goals changed over the course of the grant period, which is fine, but you'll note that here. Some questions on the types of resources and support you used during your grant period, what sorts of activities you did, what sorts of things you created, um, how the collaboration aspect worked with your project, and if you are an interdisciplinary project, how did that work out? And then some stuff about outcomes, basically across scales, from student learning outcomes to what happened in the classroom, potentially institutional changes that might have taken place, or even broader. And then kind of overall takeaways, lessons learned, things of the sort. So I think pretty straightforward. Um, were your expectations met? What did you produce? What were the successes? What sort of factors contributed to successes? What impacts were made? What were your challenges? What factors contributed to these challenges? That kind of thing. Um, where you can, please include these types of data. And it's important to have this in your final evaluation reports. Again, where it's relevant, because these are the types of things that the state likes to know about, and we are obligated to report things to the state by statute. So if you have quantitative evidence on student learning outcomes and student success, qualitative data on impact, especially student impact, but faculty is important too, especially if you're doing faculty professional development things and there are maybe departmental changes, or if the faculty development, if you can show how that impacted students, we'd love to see things like that. If you have any evidence on scaling your work, maybe outside of your department, and of course, in line with the sort of overall theme of this cohort, applications of AI in education, really clearly laying out what's worked and what contexts it's worked, why it's worked, and what didn't work. I think that's really important. I do want to emphasize that, Learning Lab, as the name implies, it's supposed to be a lab. We want to support experimentation. Not everything is going to be successful or work out, and that's okay. We want to learn from the things that don't work out just as much as we want to learn from the things that do work out. Um, and then the participation data, please ensure your participation and dissemination data are up to date. This is also in your project folders. We use this data to show kind of direct impact and reach. Um, and I guess I'll pull this up so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is the participation data tracking spreadsheet. There's faculty and student participation tabs, and then at the end, a tab on dissemination reach. So if you've done things like published a paper, presented at a conference, we also like to hear about that. If there are other types of impact or reach that isn't captured in like student enrollment or like faculty attendance at professional development meetings or something like that. If there's other types of impact, please share about that too in your report because we'd like to hear about it. Um, okay. Carly, so this stands for Curated Asset Repository for Learning Excellence. Again, this is Learning Lab's repository for all grantee created assets. All of your projects have an existing container. So this is Carly. It's the landing page is organized by subject and also by project. So if you press Explore All Projects, it pulls like a long list of it. Again, as you can see, all of the projects already have like a container. And this is an example of what a filled in one looks like. This is from a prior grantee. Um, all of this stuff, will pre-populate to the extent that we can. And then you will add uh, your assets. So I just already pulled up this one. I don't know if Aparna, Julie, or Kendon are on the call, but sorry, I just randomly picked your project. I'm just going to demonstrate real quick what this is like. It's, again, pretty straightforward. So what you'll do if you haven't done so already, pick someone on your project team to at least one person. If you want to have two people or more, that's fine, but at least one person designated to add your assets to Carly. Um, and once that person is chosen, please create an account. And again, that's also quite straightforward. Basically, you'll go to the landing page, go to sign up, and then it's, again, very basic. And once you do that, let us know that you've done that, and we will add you as an editor to your project container. So again, once you do that, you'll be able to add things and edit this page to as you see fit. So what you do is you basically make like a little sub page for each asset. So I'll just say test. Once you create sort of a little sub page for it, you go in, you either upload a file, you can link out to other things, and then you tag all this. So it's best for the person that's doing this to be someone that participated in making these assets because they will know them best and they will know best what type of metadata to add. You'll pick the type of asset it is. There's a long list of different types of assets. If it's lecture notes, if it's linking out to a GitHub repository, whatever. I'm just going to pick something random. Assessment. You'll choose a license. Again, pick one that you see fit. Pick a subject. You have to pick a subject before you pick topics. I'm just going to say calculus because I know we have a lot of different topics in calculus already here. And then let's just do a chain rule or I don't know, whatever. Just pick something. You can add a description if you want. If there are supplementary things that go with this sort of asset, you can add supplementary files. And just looking at the chat real quick, yes, you can have more than one editor. And that'll be useful if you have a ton of assets to upload. Like for example, New Math Gateway, they had many, many, many assets, and they split the uploading of it across several different people. And then, so that's basically it. And once you're done, you press publish. Publish is what makes it viewable to the public. You can upload things and then have it not viewable to the public. It'll just be viewable to editors, but this is what's gonna make it accessible to everybody else. So yeah, any questions on this? I'm just gonna undo what I just did. Okay. And just a quick note, even though this is primarily a repository for OER resources, you can link out or add non-OER things. Like if you've published something in a journal that's not open, please add that article or link out to it as well. So this asset repository, we also use this to report to the state to show the types of things that our grantees are making. So the more up to date it is, the better. And if even after you close out, if you end up making more assets that are related to the project or publish, after you close out, we would love for you to go back and add and add things to the repository. Let me see. Are there any questions that haven't been caught by the chat in the chat or verbally otherwise? Feel free to come off mute if you have another question that hasn't been addressed yet.
Twin, I have a quick question. It's Cass
Okay.
from Santa Monica College.
Hi,
If
Cass.
hi, we built two full courses, like
Mhm.
full module or they're multi-module courses for
Yeah.
our academies.
Mhm.
Would it be preferred just to put them, they can either be I mean the file type could be zip files because they could be imported into Canvas or
Mhm.
other learning management systems. Is there preferences for what is I mean, they'll be open license. So,
Yeah.
as far as the what you've seen in the past that has worked well for uploading those?
Mhm. Compressed files or a zip, I think work fine. Some people have just linked out to where, if it's on Canvas Commons or something like that, linked out. Um, I think whatever works best for what you guys have created. I don't know if we necessarily have like a preference of one or the other. Whatever's the most functional, I guess. Does that answer
Super.
your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah. All right. So I encourage everyone to kind of to peruse Carly, to share it with your colleagues. There are many, many grantee created assets in Carly. Right now, it's like the bulk of it is math because of most of our prior grantees have been calculus or pre-calculus grant projects. But as our data science grants close out, we'll have more of those. There's also chemistry, biology, faculty development stuff in there. There's a few writing assets in there already because some of the writing AI challenge writing grants have uploaded a few things. So yeah, please peruse it, share out. Um, the more visibility it has, the better, the more developed it becomes, and the more useful it becomes for everyone. Um, Okay, so in the grantee portal, there's a link to a closeout survey. And, in keeping with the general spirit of Learning Lab, we also want to continuously learn from what we're doing. And we always want your really honest feedback so we can improve. And as you're, doing this survey, we'd like you to take the whole Learning Lab experience into account from like, the RFP to setting up your project to the San Diego convening to your pod meetings. We're trying to figure out to what extent Learning Lab is meeting its own goals, to what extent we're, supporting our grantees, fostering intersegmental collaboration, all those things. And so your feedback is really important here. Um, Multiple team members can submit the survey, but only one team member should do this particular section that's on project outcomes and impacts. And the survey will branch. So, pick one person to do that. And then once you get to the question, that's basically like, are you the person that's going to be talking about project outcomes and impacts? And you say yes, it'll branch off into the appropriate section. If you say no, then it'll finish you out. Um, these surveys are anonymous, so again, please be honest. And I think there's a question towards the end of whether or not you want to continue engaging with Learning Lab. Again, answer that honestly, just so that we can get a sense of how many grantees want to continue kind of working or engaging with us in some way. But because it's anonymous, we don't know who you are. So if you do want to continue being engaged with us, also reach out to like me or Selena directly so that we know. Okay, what's our time? Okay, our 25. Um, Okay. So after you've done all of that stuff, you should schedule your closeout meeting either with me or Diane, Sesh, or Stan or Selena further down the line. The closeout meeting should happen after you've submitted your final evaluation report and after folks have had time to look at it and read it. And as usual, the closeout meeting it's not supposed to be anything that's like high stakes or anything like that. It's meant to be a conversation so that we can talk with you and understand how things went and understand what can be learned from your project. And then the very last thing, um, final invoicing and expense report. Please be in communication with your finance folks early and often throughout this process, because your final invoice needs to be a true up of your expenses. And your final invoice has to be submitted again at the end. We can't process things for payment until the final evaluation report and closeout meeting's been done. For the grant projects and the FAST projects that are hosted at UC Berkeley, this is basically the same standard invoicing process that you've been doing. But for the rest of the FAST projects, because you've been invoicing on a percentage, it's a little different. Your final invoice needs to be accompanied by an expense report that covers the spending over the course of the entire project. And your final invoice it has to be a true up. You cannot invoice for basically the total remaining balance if you have some funds unspent. Your final invoice has to match the expense reporting and the actual expenses incurred over the course of your project. I don't think this will happen, but it has happened with some of our prior grants that invoiced on a percentage where they ended up needing to return funds. So, like, for example, if a grant was $100,000, they invoiced for 75% of their grant, and now they're doing their final invoice. But once they've done the expense reporting, they've discovered, oh, we really underspent. We actually only spent $74,000 over the course of the entire grant. So in that case, they would need to return $1,000. Again, I don't think that's going to happen with the FAST projects, but it's just something to keep in mind. The invoicing instructions are in the grantee portal. And again, the templates are in your Google Drive folders. I just want to point out real quick that, let's see if we can find the right tab. Again, here are the instructions for the rest of the FAST grants. This is the expense report. You show the total spending again over the course of the entire project. This is the tab that you had been using to invoice before at a percentage. The final invoice is a separate tab. And again, this needs to be a true up. Let's see. Any questions about that?
Just a quick question on
Mhm.
so the final invoice need to match with all the like individual invoices of the expenses. Say we have some AI cost, right?
Mhm.
So we need to attach every the spending of AI to that. Is that what I mean?
Yes, we won't ask for like receipts or, actual, or, like really granular breakdowns, but yes, it needs to match what was actually spent.
But how do we like prove it matches? Like if we uh but you said that the individual receipt we don't have to provide, right?
That's
But
correct. Yeah.
just okay, just how much we have spent on those costs. Okay.
Yes,
And
that's correct.
for the I haven't filed the second invoice. Is there a deadline that I have to file it?
Um, I mean, it's preferable that you submit your second invoice according to the schedule that's like in your grant report. It's different for everyone because people started like at different times and that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah, I
that's
think mine was
preferred.
like April or March. I can't remember. Yeah, but I just have been too busy. I haven't had a
Yeah,
chance to yeah.
of course. Yes, you can still, that you're definitely not alone. A lot of institutions, they're just really backed up. Like their accounting offices are kind of really delayed. So, while it's preferred to submit, according to the schedule, for sure, you can still submit invoices delayed. Yeah.
Got it. So basically, we just need to. So for the second invoice, what I recall is we submit something to our the campus's grant office, then they will send it to Learning Lab. Am I correct? Is that the?
Yeah, but you should definitely kind of be in communication with them so that they're getting the accounting right. But either you or they can submit the invoice. But yeah.
Oh, okay, okay,
Mhm.
got it. Okay,
Okay.
all right.
All
Thank you.
right. Yeah, no problem. And then yeah, that's basically it. After that, you're done. And you can celebrate and be excited about completing your wonderful, amazing Learning Lab grant. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Nargis, and she's going to kind of give a couple reminders, maybe touch on a couple of valuation points, and yeah, so take it away.
Sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Nargis Narazi. I ran think 4 or 5-ish workshops for the grantees. And one of the workshops that we ran was on evaluation. So there's a recording and also the presentation on the evaluation or assessment that I ran. I think it was around last year that you can find on Learning Lab website. The link there is going to take you to the actual presentation, which we went over different kinds of assessment types. So in the next slide, I have an overview of all of the assessment types that we talked about. In that workshop, we talked about formative assessment, we talked about summative assessment. Take a look at this list and the examples. I also have examples of assessment tools that you can use for some of them, or also on the data column, you can kind of find out what kind of data do you have and what kind of evaluation and assessment you can do for your grants. So for example, we generally, as a wrap-up, we do formative assessment, summative assessment. If you've done pre-survey, you might want to consider doing a post-survey and then consider pre-post kind of deltas and evaluation that way. If you have 2 groups of students, whether you randomly assign them to 2 groups or you just had predefined 2 groups of students, faculty, or general subjects that you're studying, you might want to do those kinds of comparisons between different subgroups. If you have data that is qualitative, you might want to turn it into rubric-based assessment. You can define rubrics and then you can kind of evaluate on those rubrics that you're defining. Or you might want to have rubrics defined on a student's coursework and just evaluate based on those rubrics and the learning goals of each one of the assignments or each one of the courseworks that you have. Obviously, there's a lot of qualitative evaluation that we can do. You can do post interviews with the students, with faculty, with whoever that was involved with the project. You can also take a look at your learning analytics, how students are performing in the courses, how are they engaging with the platform if you created a platform. What is the learning curve of the students over the course of a module or the course that you designed. And obviously at the end, you can also potentially take a look at the student subgroups and do the equity evaluation, disaggregate data based on different demographic groups and different populations that you're studying. I went over the details of each one of these evaluation types in that workshop. So take a look at the recording. I went through the details of each one of these assessment types. Let me know if you have any questions and how you want to map different types of evaluations to your project evaluation. So to help you kind of wrap up your projects, I'm also opening my calendar for folks to schedule a meeting with me. If that's helpful to you, it's totally optional. You're welcome to book a 30-minute meeting time with me over the next 2 weeks. So I only open it for the next 2 weeks. Some grants are closing until I think the close date is June 30th. So if there is still interest, feel free to email me and I can also meet with you later in June as well. This goes until June 15th. I'm happy to take questions now. I guess anything related to the evaluation, and I think our Learning Lab colleagues can also respond to any questions that you have about the closeout. But otherwise, I'm looking forward to meeting with you if you need support after you book a time to meet with me as well. Our next slide is the QA slide. Wonderful.
Yeah, so if anyone has particular questions, the floor is open. Feel free to go off of mute and ask away. Questions?
Hi, Tracy Beidelman from Santa Monica College. Thanks so much for all this information. Did you say that we could schedule or that you will be scheduling some office hours to kind of have more conversation about some of these closeouts or ask more detailed questions after this webinar?
So yeah, for like closeout sorts of questions, please reach out to me or Selena. For like evaluation types of questions, you can talk to Nargis about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
And yes, this recording will be shared.